Hey, good afternoon. We're going to talk about Omakase by Waiki Wang. I had to look up how to say her first name. But anyway, I saw her in an interview and they called her Waiki Wang, so that's what I'm going to call her too. It was a good story. I enjoyed it. It was a little frustrating. I wanted to slap some people around, but other than that, it was a pretty good story. When I saw the interview with her, she deliberately wanted to leave this story kind of ambiguous. The meaning of the word omakase is I'll leave it up to you. And so she kind of played on that the whole time during this story. We kind of leave it up to you. And she says people ask her a lot if the couple stayed together at the end of the story, and she says, well, what do you think? And they'll give her their opinion. Oh, I think they broke up, and she'll go, okay. I guess that's the good thing. Anyway, I've got a picture of her. She's young. I think last week I didn't really hold the picture right of the author, and so you barely got to see it. But anyway, I'm not going to edit. I just go with it. She's a graduate of Harvard University, and her undergraduate degree is in chemistry, and then she earned a PhD, a doctorate in public health. She originally was going to go into medicine and changed her mind and started writing instead. And she's written her first novel, and it's called Chemistry. Chemistry, the novel. It was also picked up for a movie, and I think it was picked up a couple years ago from what I could see. It obviously didn't really go very far. I think it was picked up by Amazon, so maybe one of their streaming movies. If you have Amazon streaming, then maybe you can look and see if you can find the actual movie. I didn't see anything about it actually being released, just that it was picked up. She was born in China, and she left at the age of 5. They moved to several other countries, but came to the U.S. at the age of 12. So I want to show you what I got today. I want to try new things since I'm kind of stuck at home, and so I got a calligraphy set. I'm trying to teach myself calligraphy. How do you like my italic capitals, and my happy birthday, and right here's my name. I just got it today, so it'll get better. But anyway, I digress. She doesn't like to name her characters. She didn't name her characters in her novel, Chemistry, a novel. She had only one name in that book, the whole book. And it's 231 pages, Kay, just so you know. But she only named one character, and his name was Eric, and he was the boyfriend, and I don't know why she didn't name anybody else, but anyway, she says she doesn't like to name characters, so she didn't. And she said with these 3 characters, the man and the woman and the chef, that in real life they probably would not have known each other, or if they introduced themselves to the chef, he would have forgotten their name anyway. So it's not really important that they know their names. So she just didn't name them, which was kind of different. The man, the woman, and the chef, I knew who they were. So a lot of things come up in this story. There's a lot of different issues that come up, and that was one of the frustrations that I saw when people were critiquing this story, that there was too much that she set up on stuff and then just walked away. But then again, that goes back to the name of the story, Omakase. I'll leave it up to you. I'm not a sushi eater. I can't imagine eating But I definitely wouldn't leave it up to somebody else to pick what kind of sushi I was going to try. So I had to look that up, of course. But anyway, that the whole story kind of revolves around the title of that story. And there were a couple of things that came up that I wanted to look up. And so I don't know if you know, I was a potter for years, and so that part of the story kind of intrigued me. And I looked up the Unomi, the cups, the Japanese cups, and I bet you, Carol, you already have some of these, but this is kind of what they look like. And you can see they are taller than they are wide, and they do have a foot at the bottom. And this is the greenish glaze too, so that the potter talked about. That part was about the only thing I liked about that male character was that he was a potter. So anyway, this is from the Tang Dynasty style. Of course, this is not the actual thing, but he had given her a camel, I think, when they first started dating in Sankai glaze. I hope I'm saying that right. In the Tang Dynasty style, and that's a glaze that uses yellow, blue, or yellow, green, and white, I think. Anyway, here's actually a picture. That's kind of a common thing, is that camel. So, and it was going for $129 on eBay, that ugly thing. But anyway, just a little tidbit, since I didn't get a map that I could show you on this, because it's New York City. So anyway, I had to have something that I could show you. Some of the issues that came up were obvious right from the start. Issues of racism. When she brought up, did he have yellow fever? Like he might have been a white man who was attracted to Asian women. I'd never heard that phrase before, but evidently it's a thing. There were also issues between immigrants and their children. Immigrants who come to this country and their first generation children. Their expectations of America are quite different than what their parents were. Their parents may feel like they're not accepted as much as their children are accepted because it's their country. So there were issues about that. Issues of racial privilege, and not just racial privilege, but also gender privilege. That men in general may have some authority just by virtue of their gender. So there was that, and there was also racial privilege, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And also she touched on parental expectations, what her parents expected of her, and what she did in order to fulfill those expectations. She kind of put herself on the back burner. Her feelings of inferiority, I thought came through loud and clear. She didn't want to rock the boat. She didn't want to say what she needed. She didn't want to voice her own needs and wants. So anyway, that could have come from her parents' expectations, and it could come from a lot of things, but I'll leave it up to you. She really just doesn't resolve any of those issues. She brings them up, and it leaves the reader with this, well, why didn't she explore that? Why didn't she go into that? But she didn't tie anything up, and that was fine. That was fine. I think that was her whole point, is that she didn't want to tie up things. Underlying all of it, though, is this, the woman's low self-esteem, I thought. But then that's my part of the Omakase. I did like how she talked about the race issue. And one of the things that she said that I never really thought about, obviously, because I'm white and I have that white privilege. And she says white privilege, this was in an interview that she talked about this, but she said that white privilege was means having never to think about your race. And I thought, wow, I don't think about my race. When I think about racial issues, I don't think about the white race. I think of racial issues as somebody else's problem. And I just don't think about it because I'm surrounded by white people. Why do I don't think about my whiteness, so to speak. So it's a matter of being kind of unaware of others. I would probably feel differently if I lived in China. I would be more cognizant of my race if I lived in a place where I were part of a minority. So it could be, if I lived in China, for example, then that it wouldn't be white privilege, it would be Asian privilege. That if you're in the majority, whatever the majority is, they experience the privilege of not having to even think about their race. I think I said that right. Anyway, so how do we become more empathic? How do we recognize that we have such a privilege of this not even becoming an issue? How do we become more aware of others without overcompensating and being condescending? I think we saw that a little bit with the man in the story. Talk about condescending. If somebody patted me on the head and told me stop overthinking things, it wouldn't go well. So, that I want to put toothpicks in his eyes too at times. But anyway. Or when we think about race and we think about, racial issues, is it the other person's problem? Is it, is that the way we think? Is that part of white privilege that we think about race is not our problem? And how do we change that? All of this kind of came to a head for me this weekend. A friend of ours was actually diagnosed with COVID-19, and during this pandemic, he has had to endure a lot of anger and shunning, basically. He's recovered and he's doing well. But this was a friend of ours that lives in Tazewell County, which is Tazewell County, Virginia. We lived there for 6 years. And it's a small county, very similar to Allegheny County. It's larger in square miles, but it's a rural county. And, a small town, people know. As soon as it was published, he was the first case in Tazewell County to come down with COVID-19. And so, the nosy people that live in small towns started looking at who is it, who's been traveling recently, and he travels for his job. And so the family endured a lot of anger and a lot of online social media shaming, and luckily his children weren't infected and his wife was not infected, and he was able to quarantine, and he didn't make anybody else sick that they know of. So it all ended up well. But is it similar to, the way we look at other people of a different race, like it's their problem? Anyway, those two may or may not have anything in common, but it kind of does, in a way that, how do we approach race the way Christ would want us to approach each other? And how do we also approach this pandemic? And how do we show compassion without letting our fear overtake us? Because that fear turns into anger. We can handle anger, we can't handle fear. So I just wanted to kind of throw both of those things together, because it's very similar to the way lepers were treated during Jesus' day. How do we treat others? Who is the other? There is no other. There is no other. I hate it when I do that. Anyway, just wanted you to think about those kinds of things in relation to this story. And really, you can think about anything in relation to this story, because I'll leave it up to you. I don't have a magic saying for this, but I like the story, and I hope you do too. And I hope you will tell me what your thoughts are, and do it without, how I cry. Good Lord. Anyway, I miss you guys. Hang in there. We're going to do this. And I'll see you again next week. Thanks.